Quiet night. Hundreds of kilometers from the front line, a Russian ammunition depot lives its usual life. Guards are on patrol. Trucks are moving. Someone is smoking in the shadows of a hangar, thinking about home, about family, about anything but danger.
No sirens.
No aircraft.
No artillery.
Just the calm illusion that the war is far away. And then, out of nowhere, a single glowing arc appears in the sky. One rocket. No roar of a bomber, no swarm of drones. Just a thin, bright line cutting through the darkness. For the people on the ground, there are only a few seconds between noticing it and realizing it's already too late to react. Flash.
En explosion.
Then another and another. A chain reaction begins as shells and rockets inside the depot detonate one after another. An entire military hub simply disappears from the map in a storm of fire, shrapnel, and shockwaves. Soldiers give this phenomenon a name, the HIMARS effect. Today, we're going to see how a machine that looks like a simple truck turned into one of the most feared weapons on the modern battlefield. A system that doesn't just destroy targets, but attacks the enemy's entire logistics and planning. In this video, we'll talk about HIMARS, where the idea came from, who built it and why, how it works and what makes it different from regular artillery, and how this system changed the war in Ukraine and influenced conflicts around the world. This is a story about engineering, about strategy, and about how one truck with 3 people in the cab can break the backbone of an army that relies on massive stockpiles and long, vulnerable supply lines. Let's get into it. To understand HIMARS, we need to go back to the 1980s. During the Cold War, the United States developed a powerful multiple launch rocket system called the M270 MLRS. It was a real monster on tracks, heavy, armored with 2 rocket pods. In one salvo, it could saturate a huge area with unguided rockets, turning several square kilometers into a burning field of craters. For the era of massive armies facing each other across Central Europe, it made sense. If you expect hundreds of tanks and thousands of soldiers advancing in dense formations, pouring a storm of rockets onto a grid square on the map seems like the perfect answer. But the M270 had a big problem. It was built for a specific type of war that was already starting to fade. The system was heavy. It was difficult to transport quickly by air. It required a lot of logistics and support. And it wasn't ideal for fast, light brigades that needed to move quickly, strike, and then disappear. Inside the U.S. 9th Motorized Infantry Division, some officers began to see the future differently. They looked at the heavy-tracked MLRS and realized it could not easily keep up with the kind of rapid, flexible operations they were planning. A simple but revolutionary idea appeared. We need a light, highly mobile rocket system that we can deploy anywhere, and that can keep up with maneuver units. Not a slow, armored monster, but a fast, compact launcher on wheels. Something that could be flown in, drive off a plane, fire, and leave. That idea was the seed of what would later become HIMARS. But at first, the concept just sat in a drawer. The mindset of heavy metal still ruled the battlefield. Generals were used to thinking in terms of big tracked vehicles, giant armored formations, and firepower measured by how many tons of explosives you could throw in one salvo. Then came the turning point, the First Gulf War. This conflict showed that future wars wouldn't just be about 2 giant armies standing face to face. They would also be about fast operations, deep strikes, and flexible forces that could move quickly, hit key targets, and vanish before the enemy could respond. Air power and precision weapons played a huge role. Logistics hubs, headquarters, and command centers far behind the front line suddenly became vulnerable. The old idea of a tidy, stable front with safe rear areas started to die. The U.S. military realized that land forces needed to adapt too. They needed systems that could match this new style of warfare. Mobile, precise, and easier to deploy. In the 1990s, a company called Laurel Vought Systems, which later became part of Lockheed Martin, took that sleeping idea of a light rocket system and brought it back to life. Their proposal was bold but straightforward. Take the firepower of the MLRS family and put it on a wheeled army truck. No heavy tracks.
No massive armored hull.
Just a high-mobility launcher that uses much of the same rocket technology, but in a lighter, faster package. In 1993, the first public demonstrations of the concept took place. Engineers and soldiers saw a simple truck with a rocket pod on the back and started to realize how much potential it had. In 1996, the U.S. Army awarded a contract to build prototypes. Throughout the late 1990s, the system went through testing in combat units. It fired standard MLRS rockets and the more advanced ATACMS tactical missile. Crews learned how to operate it, how to reload it, and how to use it in real missions. And finally, in 2005, after years of development and testing, the system officially entered U.S. service under its full name, High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, or simply HIMARS. At first glance, HIMARS doesn't look like some futuristic superweapon. It looks like a truck. It weighs around 16 tons. It's about 7 meters long. It has a cab for 3 people: the driver, the gunner, and the commander. The cab is armored, but it's not a tank. That's the point. This isn't meant to drive straight into the front line and trade hits with enemy armor. It's designed to move fast, shoot from a distance, and avoid being hit at all. The real power of HIMARS sits behind the cab, in the launcher mounted on the back of the truck. HIMARS carries one standardized pod, sometimes called a container or capsule. That pod can be loaded in different ways. It can carry 6 guided GMLRS rockets. It can carry 1 large ATACMS tactical missile. And in the future, it's designed to work with new PRSM missiles, which promise even longer range and more advanced capabilities. This modular design is crucial. Instead of changing the entire launcher for different missions, the crew simply swaps the pod. A built-in crane and automated system help them unload an empty pod and load a new one. The main advantage of HIMARS is mobility. On roads, it can drive at over 80 kilometers per hour. On a full tank, it has a range of roughly 480 kilometers. That means it can move together with mechanized units and redeploy quickly between firing positions. It's not just about moving fast. It's about constantly changing where you are. Modern artillery is hunted by drones, radars, and counter-battery systems. If you stay in one place for too long, you become a target. HIMARS is built to avoid that. Another key feature is air transportability. Because it's lighter and more compact than the tracked M270, HIMARS fits inside a relatively small C-130 transport aircraft. That means you can fly it to another continent, roll it out of the plane onto a simple runway, drive it to a firing position, launch a salvo, and then move it again before the enemy can react. In a world where rapid deployment is everything, that flexibility is gold. But mobility is only half of the story. The other half is precision. Classic MLRS systems like the original M270 were born to cover areas with unguided rockets, the spray and pray philosophy. You choose a grid square on the map, fire a large number of rockets, and hope that anything inside that square is destroyed or at least suppressed. It's devastating, but not very precise. HIMARS, combined with GMLRS rockets, changed that philosophy completely. Now, instead of thinking in terms of squares on the map, you think in terms of individual targets. A specific ammo depot, a bridge, a command post, a radar, an air defense battery. A hammer turned into a scalpel. Guided GMLRS rockets use GPS navigation and onboard guidance systems to adjust their flight path. They can hit targets at ranges of 70 to 80 plus kilometers with accuracy measured in just a few meters. In some documented cases, the weapon is accurate enough to hit very small targets, practically through the window. There are several important types of munitions for HIMARS. GMLRS is the standard workhorse, used for medium-range strikes against a huge variety of targets. Ammunition depots, troop concentrations, command posts, critical infrastructure. GMLRS-ER, the extended-range version, can reach distances of up to around 150 kilometers, pushing the effective reach of HIMARS even deeper into enemy territory, while keeping the basic design of the launcher the same. ATACMS is the heavyweight option. Instead of 6 smaller rockets, you load a single large tactical missile. This missile is designed for high-value targets up to roughly 300 kilometers away. Airfields, major headquarters, large logistics hubs, or key infrastructure like ports and critical communications nodes. And then there is the future PRSM, the Precision Strike Missile. It's designed to go beyond 500 kilometers while still fitting into the same launch pod format. That means one launcher can potentially influence events far, far beyond the front line. All of this works with one simple tactic that soldiers often summarize as shoot and scoot. The launcher rolls into a firing position. The crew confirms the coordinates. They fire a precise salvo. And then, within minutes, the launcher is already on the move to a new location. By the time enemy counter-battery radars detect the launch and try to calculate the position, HIMARS is gone. It leaves behind only the glow of burning targets and a trail of confusion on the enemy's side. HIMARS isn't just theory on paper. Long before the war in Ukraine, it had already seen real combat. The system was deployed to Iraq. It went to Afghanistan. It was used in operations against ISIS in Syria. In those conflicts, HIMARS was used for pinpoint strikes on militant camps, ammunition depots, and command posts. Instead of massed artillery barrages, it often delivered a small number of highly accurate strikes on carefully chosen targets. Night operations were especially effective. A strike on exact coordinates in the dark, guided by satellites and intelligence, could turn a busy camp into ruins in a matter of seconds. The system proved that it could deliver precise fire from long distances, support special operations, and destroy critical targets far from the front line, all while staying relatively safe from retaliation thanks to its mobility. These campaigns showed that the system was reliable, accurate, and relatively easy to operate for trained crews. Soldiers learned to use its digital fire control systems, to reload pods efficiently, and to coordinate strikes with drones, aircraft, and ground forces. Most importantly, it was mobile enough that catching it with a counterattack was extremely difficult. That balance of range, precision, and mobility is what truly defines HIMARS. And then came the war that made the name HIMARS familiar to millions of people around the world. The full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. In the summer of 2022, the first HIMARS units arrived in Ukraine. Until that moment, Russia could store ammunition in huge depots relatively close to the front line, sometimes just 20 to 40 kilometers away. From there, it was easy to keep the guns firing constantly and keep the logistics chain short. For Russian commanders, distance felt like protection. They believed that if something was deep enough behind the front line, it was safe. With HIMARS on the battlefield, that illusion vanished almost overnight. Just a handful of launchers with GMLRS rockets started systematically destroying Russian ammunition depots, headquarters, bridges, and logistics hubs at ranges of 70 to 80 kilometers. Videos of gigantic secondary explosions, towering mushroom-like clouds of smoke, and depots burning for hours began to spread across social media. People who had never heard the word HIMARS suddenly started seeing it in headlines. This is what people began calling the HIMARS effect. The effect wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The Russian army suddenly faced ammo shortages in key areas. Depots that once safely supported artillery units now became deadly liabilities. They had to move storage sites far deeper into the rear, sometimes doubling or tripling the distance that shells and rockets had to travel to reach the front. Longer routes meant more trucks, more fuel, more time, and more opportunities for something to go wrong. That, in turn, meant slower supply, fewer shells at the front, and less intense bombardments. Every big warehouse turned into a ticking time bomb. Everyone knew that, sooner or later, the coordinates would be found, and a HIMARS salvo would arrive. It wasn't just about ammo. Strikes hit command posts, killing officers and disrupting coordination. Bridges and river crossings became targets, complicating logistics even more and forcing the enemy to reroute supplies. Every successful HIMARS strike was not just an explosion, it was pressure on the entire enemy system. This is where the power of precision becomes obvious. Instead of endlessly trading shells in artillery duels, HIMARS cuts at the arteries of the enemy's war machine. Its supply lines, its infrastructure, its command structure. Today, the demand for systems like HIMARS is only growing. Countries around the world are ordering the launcher for their own armies. Lockheed Martin is ramping up production to meet that demand. New training programs are being created to teach crews how to operate the system, how to integrate it with drones, satellites, and modern command networks. At the same time, new missiles like PRSM and follow-on platforms with more firepower and longer range are in development. Concepts like HIMARS, launchers with more pods and more rockets, are being discussed as the next step in this evolution. HIMARS has become more than just a new type of artillery. It's a symbol of a new approach to war. An approach where precision matters more than sheer volume, where logistics become prime targets, and where a single truck can have strategic impact far beyond its size. But there is one important truth that we have to say clearly. HIMARS is not a magical win-the-war button. No weapon, no matter how advanced, can win a war on its own. What makes HIMARS so effective is the combination of several elements. Good intelligence, drones and satellites for reconnaissance, secure communications, trained crews, and smart strategy at higher levels of command. When all of that comes together, HIMARS becomes what many soldiers call it: the sniper of modern artillery. A sniper doesn't fire thousands of bullets. A sniper waits, chooses the right moment, and uses a single, precise shot to change the situation. HIMARS does the same, but on a much larger scale. So, let's go back one more time to that quiet night we started with. A depot full of ammunition, trucks parked outside, soldiers chatting, smoking, maybe scrolling their phones, thinking the front line is far away and they are safe. One launch, one flight, one impact, thousands of shells that will never be fired. A supply line that suddenly stops working. A command staff that has to rethink its entire plan. Behind that single flash in the night sky stand decades of development, the evolution from heavy tracked monsters to light mobile platforms, and a shift from area saturation to surgical precision. Behind it stands the understanding that, in modern war, logistics are the heart of the army, and that hitting the heart can be more effective than hitting the fists. HIMARS is more than an acronym. It is the story of how an engineering idea, combined with technology and strategy, can change the balance of power on the battlefield. If you'd like a separate deep dive on the different types of HIMARS rockets, or real operations where HIMARS played a key role, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.